The very first time anybody experiences anything having to do with your business, your organization, your product, that is the beginning of your brand. Now, a brand has many definitions out there, but generally speaking, it is the idea, the gut feeling that people have about your business, your offering, your product, your service, whatever it is that you do. Now, you can deliberately impact those types of experiences through strategic planning. And that's what we're going to discuss today with a special guest. Now, this is a blind spot, I think, for just about any business out there. So it's really critical to pay attention to this episode, and you'll learn some really important things that could be major game changes in how you attract customers and convert them to your offering. I'm Steve Reed, and this is Brand or Die. Well, our guest today is Laura Lian Williams from Laura Lian Creative Partners, and we actually met at a local networking event here in Austin, Texas, and we had a conversation. Laura had mentioned something about my hat, and that kind of kicked off the conversation, which is why I like wearing this hat. It starts some interesting conversations. But I was really compelled by some of the things she was talking about. I said, hey, let's get together and let's talk about this later. So we met at a local coffee shop and had a really great discussion, and was telling me about some of the projects she was involved in and why there's value there. And I thought to myself at that moment, we have to record an episode about this because I think this is really important for people to know about. We're in a day and age where everyone is trying to get attention, and people are trying all kinds of different things. And there's so many little tricks up people's sleeves out there that you can use depending on your industry and how you're applying it, that it can be really, really helpful. So without further ado, let's go ahead and let Laura kick this thing off, and we'll go from there.
Thanks so much, Steve. I'm really glad that we got to meet in Austin. We've just been so excited meeting new people with our nomad journey. But talking about experiential branding and design, I think it's just really important that people realize it's so much more than just a logo. And I know we really touched on this a lot as we met for coffee. And
Mhm.
it's not just showing up with that visual piece and saying, great, here's my logo on the business card. But we know that we have to showcase our mission, our vision, and our values all in this one tiny amount of time when you're first meeting someone. So I want people to think about that brand experience and that impact at all different phases and levels. So
Mhm.
it's, yes, when you're meeting someone and giving a business card, but it's even when you go to trade shows and events. And so I think people need to think about it more in like bite-sized pieces. And how are you going to be different and stand out?
Absolutely. And I think that's the hard part is, okay, where do I begin? Because it sounds really overwhelming. Like trade shows, for example, we talked a lot about those. And I've been to many, many trade shows in my day. And typically you spend a lot of the time putting the booth together, and you get all your graphics and stuff printed, you get some cards printed, and then you show up, and then you drive to Walmart and you buy a big bowl, a plastic bowl, and you get a big
Yep.
bag of candy and dump it in there. And then once you get there, you see all these other people doing different things. You're like, oh, why didn't I think of that? There's just the rush of everything. So how does this come into play? How do you even figure out what to do? Like, what steps should you take to come up with something that creates more of a memorable experience?
That's a great question, right? And so it goes back to really understanding what is the company's goal? Why are we even here at the trade show? What is that niche? What is that target audience? So I'm really going to take it a step back and just really make sure that there's a strategy in place. We want to, of course, be intentional not only with our marketing budget, but even with our time, right? We're never going to get this time back. And we want to be thoughtful of where we're putting all the key players, if you will. And so what we look at too is, once we understand why we're here at this trade show, we know the audience we want to talk to, and we have our sales team and everyone there. I really like to think about, okay, well, what is the focus that we're trying to educate people on? Is it a certain product or service? Maybe you have so many different things going on in your business, but maybe you're here for one really certain part or piece. And
Mm.
then I call it more like edutainment. How do we really entertain, but we're also educating, right? And so, like you
Yeah.
said, we don't want to just put the bowl of chocolate, out there. And I know there's even people doing it at the pretty high end level, like the
Hmm.
really big companies that can afford the Nutella bar person, right? But still, it's funny whether you have the money or not, there's still that disconnect. Great. So you're being, lured in with the smell of Nutella, but I don't know how that's connecting to the product still sometimes.
Right.
So I think we can see it at all levels. It also doesn't matter what really budget you have, but I rather be more intrigued of how are you going to teach me with me not even knowing it, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's the big draw.
Yeah, and when you're going to a trade show, they're coming to experience really the brand.
Mhm.
You know, they're
Yeah.
they're seeing everything firsthand. They're getting to put their hands on things. They're getting they're able to see things that they wouldn't normally see. And so we apply strategy to so many other things in business, but oftentimes this is something that's kind of left aside. Now even really big companies, they've got people on their teams that are strategizing and putting this together. But the further down you go in terms of the size of the business, you see less and less of that strategy. And so that's where contacting an agency such as yours, where you have experience doing these types of things, you could be a huge asset to them to make sure that their investment pays off. Because you're taking time away from your business, you're taking away resources, you're pumping money into it, and you want it to be successful. And for just a little bit more, incorporating that strategy into it, I mean, you could even potentially save money and allow you to accelerate those benefits further on. Could you share some examples of things that you've done at trade shows so we can go, because we're talking about kind of conceptually, but let's give some examples of things that you've been able to do. You had some really cool stories and what that looks like and the impact that it has.
Absolutely. So I was just thinking of someone that we worked with. They were in the medical space. And so they had their first time being an exhibitor. So, that's all new, right?
Hmm.
And so there's a lot going on, right? All the pieces and instructions, if you will, that are even given by the events company that you have to, have someone really full-time manage just that, right? And
Yeah.
then you have, okay, where am I going to put the booth? Do I want this intersection? Oh, do I want to be by the bathrooms? I think a lot of people forget that there's planning even goes beyond that, not just
Mm.
how does the booth look. So we have to think about our placement. What is also the flow of the space? So, for example, this one client also not only had a booth, but they really were so, good at taking advantage of all the opportunities. They also wanted the advertising space. So there was these four rotating columns up in the front. You had to come through a bunch of doors and then into the main hall, if you will. But they were so excited. They said, "Can we monopolize this rotating four-sided column? Let's just buy all sides." And I said, "Wait, I love your energy, but let's just slow down just a second. Let's look at the space and let's see that, oh my gosh, there's all these other columns. What if we could do one side of each of the four rotating columns?" So
Mm.
now we're spreading the love of our brand, and of course it's consistent. So whatever angle you're coming from, or again, there's like 20 doors that you could come from. We're not going to control that, us as the team, of course, but why don't we hit them at all angles? And so, of course, my team that I worked with, they're so great over there. They took my lead and they said, "Yeah, that makes so much more sense. Why would we just put four of our same, similar looking designs, but they had very obviously different focuses." So now we really got to spread the love of the services and the products that we were showcasing just for this trade show. But yeah, that would be a big one. I think people just get a little too excited and they're like almost sometimes just
Yeah.
throwing money at things so quickly because they're so scared like someone else is going to take it from them. So I just want to help people be really again smart about
Yeah.
what are we actually doing? Let's be laser focused. Like really with the resources too, because I value that they even made the budget cut out for this, but I really want to be diligent in where it's going and how it's being used.
Yeah, so it's thinking beyond just the little 10 by 10 or 10 by 20 plot that you're
Yeah.
getting. Because usually you see the
Yeah.
the classic overhead map of
Yep.
the area you're going to be in. You're like, okay, the food's over here, the bathrooms are over there. And ideally, yeah, like, do we want to be close to the bathroom? But, you're talking about, as people are coming in and that there
Correct.
are these pillars in this building. So how do you find things like that out? I mean, in cases like that, maybe it's a conference center that is in your location where you can just drive there. But what happens if it's a remote location? How do you get those kinds of details?
Yeah, no, even better question that you brought that up. So this client, we're out of the Chicago area, but we're
Hmm.
really also remotely all over. But this conference was in Anaheim, California. So right to your point, I couldn't just drive over there and walk the floor myself. So I looked at all the virtual online stuff that I could find of the
Mm.
space. I looked at other events that were held there. I did get the floor plan from the company who was putting on this event for the association. So I was that partner, if you will, for my client. I really spoke, as them on behalf of them, just representing our company. Okay, this is what I need from you guys. These are our questions, or, I'm asking all of those questions, but it was nice doing that more partner to partner. So I'm taking that extra step and level of like, hey, you know what? I just want to make sure I'm doing the best. And it's almost kind of like, what do you think about, with banking and finance, right? It's like your fiduciary. I
Hmm.
feel like it's my due diligence and it's my job to make sure I have the best interest of my client. So I'm going to scope out everything. I'm going to ask all my questions because I want to make sure we have the best placement.
Yeah, for sure. And so was that even listed as a place to advertise on those pillars or
Yes, they
it was?
were in a marketing packet, and so I think
Ah.
everyone gets it. But I know there's this they're very clearly written, okay, there's only one of this, or there's only three of that. So I think there is this mad dash and rush, but it's like, oh my gosh, just grab it, reserve it. But remember, these things aren't cheap. Being the main
Hmm.
lanyard sponsor, being the main person on certain
Right.
pieces or, billboards or staircases, sometimes there's only one. So
Hmm.
I think it's interesting to see, again, it depends on what your budget's like. But I just want people again to be thoughtful of where they're going to be putting, taking up space. But another thing we also looked at too, and we went through all of the things with my client, all of the opportunities. They were just particularly excited about that one. But we also did a floor decal. And so that
Oh,
goes
okay.
back to again being on the rug and I'm asking, okay, like I'm looking at the other booths too. Like I'm seeing where are those big companies. So again, this was medical. So, we all know there's the really big companies of medical and they have, the budget of like crazy crazy amounts that I mean it probably looks like the size of their booth is like a house, I mean it's like a
Yeah.
huge plot of land.
You
So
walk
you
into
have
it.
right, you literally are entering their force field or bubble. So I think it's hard not to feel like you're up against the really big dogs, if you will. So
Yeah. Well, that's why it's important to
yeah.
have someone that is very creative when it comes to these types of strategies because there's always something you can do creatively. There's always an angle. There's always something unexpected. There's always something that maybe other people aren't thinking about. And I love the idea that you're doing all this extra research, looking at the layout, because you may find an opportunity that isn't listed. Has it ever come up where you're looking around or you see something and you just ask the question, hey, could we pay you to do X here or something? This isn't advertised. I would
Yeah,
think that
well,
those
y-
opportunities would be available as well.
yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think there's definitely potential. I'm sure they would be open to it. Of course, it's working with the association and
Hmm.
um but what I've been noticing too is how can we take even more advantage of the little space that we have? It's truly your real estate. How do we
Hmm.
use every nook and cranny to our advantage? And so I made sure that our booth was placed at an intersection. I know you get a slight little bit more wiggle room, I feel, when you're on the edge instead of
Mm.
being, kind of sandwiched in
Right.
between the others. So I'm like, okay, well, let's really lean on. Great. It's nice having that open airway, right? At the intersection. You
Yeah.
also don't feel as
We get those two
crammed.
sides.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Right there. And so you're almost like a corner
Hmm.
plot. And so I really like that because I think people are meeting there, they're running into other people. But I was so excited because my client, of course their goal was to have, the most people, but we were the busiest booth. So that was
Mm.
really great to see because I do not only just help with the pre-design and I guess the after the post, but we also go with our clients on site. We help with that execution.
Hmm.
They fly us out. We're making sure that you're not opening up the tablecloth day of and there's all the crease wrinkles, right? I'm like, no, I help them build out systems and processes as well on that. So I'm like,
Mm.
no, we have our steamer and we pack that in the bag. So, Steve, I want people to remember too, it's not just, okay, doing it once, oh, phew, we're done. No, no, no. I'm thinking about the future.
Hmm.
Okay, how can we make this seamless? How does everyone have the same badge? How are we consistent, like showing up as one unit?
Yeah.
So,
And it goes a long way. All those little details matter quite a bit because
yeah.
if they see you putting all that attention into those little details, especially if your business, those details kind of matter, right?
Yeah.
If you're in a highly specialized field and you show up and you're kind of mismatched and things are disorganized, it doesn't really reflect too good on
No.
your values and your standards.
Yeah.
It does communicate something, and unfortunately, it's going to communicate something that you're not wanting to communicate. It may not even be true about you, right? You're
Right.
really good at what you do. You're just bad at trade shows, you know. But
Right.
unfortunately, that's the impression you get. It's like showing up in a wrinkled suit or somewhat disheveled or something like
Mm.
that. That may not reflect who you are, but it sends a message. So these little
Absolutely.
things are important. A lot of people don't think they are, but they are. They
And
create these little
yeah.
microscopic interactions and impressions upon people.
I think it's great that you touched on that too about, showing up and right perception is reality. And
Hmm.
so, especially when it's your first time, a lot of the people that, my team met with there in Anaheim, there was a lot of big business meetings that happened. It was, oh, I'm going to meet you at your booth at 1 o'clock. There was a lot of this meeting stuff happening. It wasn't
Mm.
just strangers looking at your booth. So it was so important because this is as close as they're going to get because they're not going to fly out to Chicago maybe,
Yeah.
next week. So we really had to put our A game, and everyone should be thinking that way. This is your genuine, beachfront property. Show what you've got, show up, and I mean, if that's how you want to present yourself, this is the time to do it. But I think it is hard. Like you said, there's a lot to juggle, but I really try to break it down into those little actionable pieces where we have all the systems in place. You just got to tell us, okay, if we're allowed to do it, and then we can move forward. But really, we built out these systems so people aren't thinking, oh my gosh, the night before, we have no name tags,
Yeah.
you know, doesn't help.
Well, that's the problem too. Is you have a lot of the founders and everyone. They're focusing so much on their messaging, who they want to meet with, and
Yeah.
they shouldn't have to worry about name tags, and they shouldn't have
Yes.
to worry about wrinkled, tablecloths, and having
Right.
somebody take care of all of that for them in a way that's very strategic, that's goal oriented. I mean, that's huge. Then that's just more stress off of your back to where you could
Exactly.
focus on what you need to do. And I know there's a lot of people that want to do everything themselves. They micromanage, they want to control everything, they want it done right. I totally get that because I'm kind of that kind of person myself. I'm very hands on with everything. So over the years, I've been trying to learn to let things go.
With this medical company, we actually did something that was unique. We not only had an app, it was like a body chart. It was showing all the different
Hmm.
tests we can do, and it's all color coded. But we had the tablets all organized on their tablet stands. But we also had a life-size version of the body also cut out. So yes, it was a photo moment as well. So you could put your head behind there. Um, it wasn't so much of a game because we also did think about our target audience. It is the people in suits. They probably don't want to get messy in a sense.
Yeah.
Um, there was that just interaction. And then we also did have, of course, we had a video also showing and highlighting a product and a machine we had on display. But we had all these different touch points, as well as we did some custom DNA mint molds. So since this was in the medical space, we did have that extra little touch, and so it was great as they were having these meetings and giving out their bags of, information. We added those little elements in, and I could really see from the looks on, all the people's faces. It was just like they're expecting a boring mint, great, here's another mint tin. But we said, it's a fresh take on DNA and RNA extraction. So we're already tying back to the message. What
Hmm.
do we do? Why are we here? And yes, it's a mint. And so they open it up. It's in the shape of a DNA mint mold. So we got those custom made. But I think it's important that, it stood out, yes, but we wanted to be memorable as well.
Yeah.
But we really wanted just to have these various touch points because everyone's coming in, we all think and learn differently. And so I'm trying to hit on those different elements on what people feel comfortable with. We did have the printed collateral as well, too. So,
Yeah. Well, I like the fact that there's a variety of options, right?
yeah.
Some things
Mhm.
like getting custom mints made in a tin and getting all that branded. I mean, there's going to be a cost associated with that, but I mean, simply how you're arranging the banners in the entrance and thinking about how people come in, that seems more like, well, there's probably not a ton of costs associated with that. It's just more strategy and where you're trying to place things. I mean, in the creative space, there's so many different things you can do. So it's really going to depend on what the goals are, what the budget is, and what you can do creatively within that. But there are so many different options. You mentioned an app. So was that app custom
Yes.
created for that event?
Yes. Well, and it was actually just to be used in general. It
Okay.
was, I mean, so it was highlighted, of course, for the trade show, and definitely that was a big moment for people to touch it on the tablet. And so it would kind of zoom in and you could really see the test. So when you're trying to treat a certain wound or whatnot,
Hmm.
it would show what test. And then, of course, that's where this medical company can do these tests. So again, I like that it was just interactive. And it still matched exactly. So that big life-size body chart was consistently matching with the design on the app of the body chart. And then we also had a brochure that opened up so you could have the full body as
Yeah.
well in your bag.
Yeah, and I really
Mhm.
like how you're incorporating different senses of the human body, touch and
Yeah.
taste, right?
Yep.
There's auditory branding as well. There's a lot of, McDonald's, da 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 da. They all
Yeah.
have their little jingles and things like that, and they make
That's
a big
right.
difference. And what's kind of interesting about that is the more senses you can involve in the experience, if possible. I mean, that's why people do the cookie and the candy. It's not just to get a
Yeah.
treat, but
Yeah.
the social aid chocolate or something, or that mint, and then you see the mint and you feel the texture of it and you put it in your mouth. I mean, that's like three different senses and smell. Maybe you smell it when you put it in there. Possibly
Yeah.
four different senses. If it just played music, you'd get all of
There
them,
you
right?
go.
And
That's right.
so,
And it's good you say that too, because I was thinking when you say like audio, visual and stuff,
mhm,
keeping in mind that you are at a loud, busy trade show. So,
yes,
right, you can't always hear. I mean, there's just so much noise. Everyone's in conversation. So, reminding yourself too that you need to have subtitles on those videos, right? So it's
yeah,
doing the
totally,
demo of the product. But again, how do we help even thinking about it even from an ADA accessible use too, right?
hmm
It's not just I can't hear because it's thousands of people are here at the trade show, but how do we think about, especially it depends on our audience too, but I want it to be accessible for anyone to be able to see, use, or hear, or watch.
Yeah, and in a
So,
noisy convention center, I mean, pretty much everyone is going to be at a slight disadvantage when it comes to what they can actually hear. And so
yeah,
that's where, if you, yeah, you have a video where it's mostly someone talking, and if they happen to be talking softly, or maybe the volume on the TV doesn't go high enough, and
right,
it's getting drowned out by everything because it's at the back of your booth and nobody can hear
right,
it. I mean, those are things that you don't want to discover that on the day of and go,
right.
oh, all this time we invested into this is now been compromised by something we
Yes.
didn't necessarily anticipate.
That was
Uh,
the first thing I made sure too when we did the video editing and production. So we did all the creative direction
cool.
and literally worked with the medical team on almost having them be actors and actresses, but they had to demo how that product was being used. And right, you can't block the camera as you're opening the door or, turning this on or hitting a button. So we had to work with them on how are we
Hmm.
showcasing this? How do we have good lighting? But of course, I'm making sure in post editing that captions, I'm like, they have to be so clear, so
Hmm.
legible. And again, you don't even know. We could also sometimes we talk to people in different languages, right? We're serving other
Right.
countries, or so especially on medical, you also know all the the regulations and the red tape. So I'm very familiar with that as well. And that's another big thing people, I think, when you get excited with trade shows, no one's trying to be in trouble, but we want to keep everyone,
Totally.
in good standing.
Awesome.
So,
Well,
yeah.
how about one more story where you saw like a really big impact from you being able to kind of step in and get a good reaction from the visitors
Yeah.
and customers?
Absolutely. So, another example would be it also falls kind of in the medical space, but it's more on the device side. Working with someone who's been, he's amazing and talented at his craft. But, I asked him, I said, how do you show up and highlight a new product that you want to share with the world? He's like, I go to trade shows. And I was like, awesome, wonderful, like, good idea. And then I said, okay, tell me more. And that's kind of where the story ended. And I said, what? What do you mean that's it? And you just kind of say ta-da? And he's like, well, I thought that's what you do. And I was like, what if you could do what if I'm like, what if you could do this? You have this amazing product. Instead of hiring a mannequin or a person to hold this thing or a wearable, I said, what if you could think about it as like a ticketed event? What if you could pre-market and say, you know what? I know I'm going to this conference, and you know what? We only have a certain amount of slots
Hmm.
that you can try it on, wear it, step into it. And you know what? We're going to be here this weekend, and you know what? There's only a couple spots left. What if you put that all pre-marketed on social media, all your different channels, and then you're solidly booked? You have someone at your booth nonstop, and then
Mm,
you have them. It's like a reservation. You show up a couple
smart.
minutes early before your slot. We have a line in front of your booth, and your salespeople feel like it's genuinely someone who wants to talk to them. And I
Right.
think we're also getting to the point of like, of course, everyone's going to be there for different reasons, but you probably want to meet really with the people that there's a reason they signed up and took the
Yeah.
time. And I want to start vetting and helping people get quality people coming to the booth. You're always going to get the shoppers and the lookers, and that's
Hmm.
fine. But I was thinking, why can't you make it more of a VIP moment and experience for the people that actually want to be planners and they know that they're going to
Absolutely.
be there? So he said to me, he's like, I never thought I could do that. And I was like, of course you can. I was like, you got this. I said, you're doing amazing work and putting it out there to the world. But I was like, let's talk to the right people. And so I really love seeing people light up and they kind of have this moment of like, wait, I can do that. And that just brings me a lot of joy. And I'm like, absolutely. Why can't you? Who's stopping you?
Man,
So,
that's, yeah, that
yeah.
is so important. I mean, imagine you just look at the contrast between those two things, right? Just
Mhm.
standing there, reaching out to people. And I've done that, right? People come by the
Yeah.
booth, they're like, "Oh, a person, let's talk to them."
Yeah.
And they're not even in your market, right? They're not
Yeah.
even and
Yeah.
you just
Yeah.
wasted your time. You're there for a
Yeah.
limited amount of time. You've spent all the money to fly out. You've built the booth and everything. And you want to sit and talk to people who aren't even interested, or maybe like, oh, tell me about this, but they're not going to buy. They're not even
Right.
anywhere close to being in the market. Now you have a line of people scheduled to come out, and it's all people who know exactly what you're doing, who want to be there, who want to
Mhm.
learn. I mean, what would you rather have? I mean, it's a clear choice, right? But
Right.
that's the
Right.
problem is people just, they, a lot of times they don't know that's possible. How do I even do that? Who do I even
Right.
talk to? And so that's why. So we've talked a lot about conferences and conventions. Are there any other applications of this and these types of strategies and techniques that you think are effective?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to remember, I know we're talking about these big trade shows, but you can do this at even the smaller micro level. And I know it doesn't maybe sound as grand, but it's just as important how you show up
Hmm.
in your local chamber of commerces or wherever you're meeting your people. Is it those golf outings, right? I mean, we all know, I think we all been to our fair share of golf outings and we're all like, not another one. And so I want you to also start thinking, can you be different? Can you please not be another pen in the bag? Like you're getting 10 pens.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, unless you're fighting to be the coolest pen in the bag, but like, come on, guys. Like
right.
let's break the ice and let's say, you know what? Maybe this theme, I don't know, maybe they're doing a tropical theme with their annual golf outing. Maybe yours can relate to that, right? And
Hmm.
being a tropical item that still ties back to what your company does, but why can't your item stand out in the bag? And I think there's those small moments like that. But I also ask again, where do you also not only network, just, yes, I know everyone needs to do sales, but I also ask the founder, the business owners, or even the sales team, what do you enjoy? Do you have
Mm,
hobbies? Do you like to play tennis? Are you a pickleballer, right? So pickleball's been so popular. So I was talking to someone and she's in I think more the insurance industry, but I said, okay, you want clients and that's great. You're going to the senior center. I was like, but what do you like to do? And she's like, well, I like pickleball. I said, well, what if you did more pickleball events? And you got the seniors, you got the pickleball. I mean, it couldn't have been perfect. And I was like, look, and you love what you do. So she was setting up and doing pickleball events for her target audience, but like she didn't combine the two and didn't even realize it. I was like,
yeah,
look, you're now getting to have fun at the same time while
totally.
talking to the people you needed to talk to, and you're bringing in business. Like, why can't we learn to just kind of re-envision sales and re-envision networking? And we all know it's relationship based, but we have to sit down and figure out, okay, well, what do those specific relationships look like? You can't help everyone, right?
Yeah,
When you talk to everyone, you're talking to no one. So
exactly.
you gotta
Well,
just keep defining.
I just played pickleball last night, by the way.
Oh,
But
yeah, I
uh,
love pickleball. It's great.
it's fun. It was one of
Yeah,
those things that was like, isn't that like an old person sport, like shuffleboard
yeah,
or something? And then
yeah,
everyone's doing it. And then you're playing it and you're like, oh, this is slower than tennis, but easier than ping
yeah.
pong. I can see why people like
Hmm.
it. But
Yeah.
it's still challenging. But it's a fun sport. But I think the main thing is, and you and I both see this whenever we're in situations where we're dealing with clients, and all of us suffer from it, including you and I. When you're so close to what you're doing, you get these blinders on where all
That's
you
right.
see is what's in front of you and what you've been doing. And it can be really, really hard to see beyond that or to try something that's outside of your comfort zone or you have a blind spot. And so that's what's so critical about agencies and consultants and a lot of the things that we do is we come in as an outside set of eyes and we don't even have those blind spots. We don't even have those biases. And we're able to see things that others can't. And I think that's something everybody needs at some part in their life on a lot of different levels is just an outside set of eyes to maybe see what you're not seeing.
I realized too, Steve, when we have those discussions and they're just, yeah, kind of tiptoeing around, can you just give me thoughts on this? I realize we ask a lot of good, curious, deep questions, and it's not to be nosy. I tell people, well, you pay us to tell you the truth. And I'm not
Hmm.
going to sugarcoat it because I said,
Right.
we're not here to put on more band-aids. We need to treat the wound deeper than what it is. It's not a surface level thing, but we realize by us asking these questions, we've really uncovered a lot more for our clients. And they're
Hmm.
like, oh my gosh, that related to this other thing that we did before you came. Or, oh, you know what? Can you actually look at these five other things? So I've seen how it really evolves quickly, and people think they just need you for this one thing, and it turns into obviously there's a lot more behind, the curtain than you realize. But I'm like, well, doesn't it feel so good though to get, like you said, a fresh perspective and set of eyes? Because we haven't been in your industry for as long as you, most likely. So
Hmm.
that's been really, really helpful. And I was just actually, it's funny you mentioned this. I was just talking to someone who's like, can I just get your help on this one thing and feedback? I said, sure, let me help you. They're a little smaller. And she does a conference. And I said, your logo doesn't like match. Like you want to do yoga mats, you want to do all of these things. I was like, what's the fun? Like it's not even the color that's off. I said, she's like, oh, well, it's just, as long as the word's spelled correctly. And I was like, okay, well, I was like, I'm gonna care about it and I'm gonna ask you for that font. So I would, I want to, I said, like, I can't not have it be consistent like that. That's just, again, it's my job and it's my
Yeah.
role to make sure everything matches. I said, we're not here just to push pixels and be a task rabbit. We really genuinely want to see the best for you. Like we want it to be seamless. And she's like, oh, I didn't really realize it mattered that much. And I'm like, it does. I care about your brand, I really do. So,
It's really astounding to see how how many people have things that they just don't notice. And you can walk into almost any business and find things like that everywhere. And people are like, oh, it's fine. When it's really not, yeah, maybe fine for you. You may not care, but you have customers that care. And they're
Yeah,
the ones whose opinion really matters.
yeah,
And a lot of times, a lot of businesses are just a reflection of the ego of the founder, and
yeah.
they're like, well, I like this, this, and this, and they're turning off a huge portion of their customers without even realizing it. And so, yeah, it's really important to pay attention to those types of things. But I guess just to kind of close this out, we've talked
Yeah.
about a lot of different ideas. Clearly, it seems like the easiest thing to do would just be reach out to you. I'll put your
Sure.
contact information in the description if anyone would like to reach out. Uh, but what would you say would be some simple, just kind of on the house concepts that any business would want to keep in mind that they could do to either maybe self-reflect or principles that they would want to adopt to help them do some things on their own and find some
Sure.
success?
Great question. So I would say I'm going to start with one that's maybe more, I guess, conceptual.
Hmm.
But I'm going to challenge you as a founder, all the founders out there listening, please look at your mission, vision, and values. And I know you're probably tired of hearing everyone maybe tell you that. Maybe your strategist has been asking you to do that. I don't know. But I just really ask you to look back on it. I mean, I've talked to owners 40 plus years, and I'm sure it's probably evolved and changed, right?
Hmm.
Maybe not that you're changing your whole company, but it's okay to like grow and evolve. But I think it's important that we do look at it with a fresh set of eyes every, even couple of years. I think you should do that for leadership, but then I also think you should do that with your company and your employees because I love your hat again, Steve, because it is genuinely brand or die. Like I'm not just thinking about it as your brand outwardly and showing as appearance, but to me, it's also the brand culture. And you're setting the tone not only to your customers, but it's also how you treat your team and
Hmm.
your employees and how are they showing up. Like everyone wants to feel like they're genuinely a part of that. And so if we're not doing our job as building that strong brand foundation, I only just say that it's so important to really take the time, it deserves. But I would look at that because you really want a strong team inwards and as your clientele. I
Right.
guess I know again that's more high level. But I guess the other thing is I would ask yourself kind of what we did with the pickleball situation. I would just say, what do you enjoy doing? What are your
Hmm.
personal hobbies and passions? Because you might not even realize they're already aligning with driving your business forward. And then you can be creative with the different touch points. But when you have that clear focus on that audience, you're really able to hone in, wow, you could really curate that event. Maybe it's branded pickleball paddles, right? How cool is that? Maybe you're doing a really cool event and half of the proceeds go to a nonprofit. Maybe they're
Hmm.
tournaments. Maybe the prize is, it's based on all the sponsors, but I think there's ways that you can bring the community together based on also what you like. And I think you should have fun with your company. I think you should enjoy it as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, those are great tips. And some of those things you can kind of do on your own. You can revise your
Mhm.
vision statements, and you can also reach out for help if you need to do that. And
That's right.
if it's too overwhelming, especially.
Absolutely.
So those are great tips. Well, Laura, thank you so much for coming on and sharing some of your stories with us. And hopefully, something in this message will reach someone out there that'll kind of light a fire and say, hey, this is what we've been looking for. And inspire some creativity and enable people to create that differentiation that could be the tipping point in taking their business to the next level. That's awesome. Any final words or any final thoughts you'd like to share?
I guess I would say really just please put the time into your brand because it's so worth it. And it means I know that everyone cares about their company and like the next steps in your future, but I want you to show up and mean it. I guess that's kind of my final words. Just really own it and be proud of it.
Right on. Well, thanks, Laura. Appreciate you having this
Thank
conversation
you.
with me and sharing your thoughts. You're awesome.
Thank you. You too.
I'd like to give another heartfelt thanks to Laura Lian Williams for coming on the show today and sharing her knowledge and experience with us. I was really excited to have that conversation, and I hope you got some really important things out of it. Maybe it sparked something in you, and if so, her information's down in the description. You'd be able to reach out to her and contact her with any needs you may have in this regard. And I encourage you to also like, subscribe, and share this video. Save it if you found some important information in here that you want to refer back to. And also, if you haven't noticed, one of the new things I'm deciding to do is, along with my brand or die hat, I thought it would be cool to kind of rep some of the brands that we have here in Austin and in the greater Texas area. So I've been buying a lot of t-shirts. So today I'm repping Chewy's Fine Tex-Mex. We go there as a family a lot. It's pretty awesome. I'm not getting paid by any of these guys to wear their shirts. I just am going to wear shirts of brands that I think do a really good job of creating an amazing experience, kind of like we talked about, and that do good for their customers, and they're building strong brands. And so be on the lookout for the different shirts I'll be sporting and see if you've recognized any of these brands, or maybe you've been able to experience some of what they've done for you. If you have any experience with Chewy's, leave some comments below, and we'll go from there. But hey, thanks for joining us on this episode, and we'll see you again on Brand or Die.